Welcome to session 2, Food Recovery with Peter Sinclair, Executive Director of Loaves and Fishes Community Food Bank. I'm Shea of Transition Nanaimo, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I would like to introduce to you Peter, and let me just get my notes here. Sorry. So Peter Sinclair has served as Executive Director of Loaves and Fishes Food Bank since 2011. He served on the board of Food Banks BC for years. He has a Bachelor of Commerce in Entrepreneurship from UVic and a Master of Divinity from Regent College. Loaves and Fishes' highly successful Food for You food recovery program has dramatically increased the amount of healthy, nutritious food available to people in need, while at the same time saving over 1 million pounds of food from ending up in the landfill every year. Additionally, over the last 4 years, more than $4.5 million worth of food has been provided to other nonprofits there by freeing up funds in these nonprofits to be used in other areas of their operations. Peter is passionate about sharing his expertise and experience to others, set up food recovery programs so other communities can share in the abundance of food that is available while also reducing food waste. And we are really thrilled and honored to have you part of our very first Food for Thought Summit. Peter, thank you. Over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the opportunity to come and share and just bring you up to speed on how we got to where we are and where we see ourselves going in the future. Were we going to start with those poll questions, Shea? Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Do you want me to launch that now?
Sure. Yeah. Let's just try that and see how that works. So we've got a few questions here, and I'm assuming you're all able to see that. Are you able to answer those questions, and we'll see how those poll results come in?
So yeah, this is a test of your knowledge of how much Loaves and Fishes is doing to reduce food waste. So go ahead and click the answer that you think is relevant. Number 1 is, what volume of food does Loaves and Fishes collect each month? You have 4 choices there. Number 2, what volume of food does Loaves and Fishes distribute each month? You have 4 choices there. And what volume of food does Loaves and Fishes give to farmers and or compost each month? So I'm not seeing anyone answering.
There's popping up on, I'm seeing them here.
Oh, okay, good. Strange. That's weird. It's not showing me what percentage of people. Oh, now viewing questions. It says 0% voted. Weird. But you're seeing it, so. Go ahead and vote.
Okay. So I'm going to assume, oh, I'm seeing the numbers jump around. I guess you're able to change your votes. Get a bit of
we're going to get it right. Shall I end the poll?
Pardon me?
Did you end the poll, or shall I end the
poll?
poll?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Shall I end it and see what the results are? How many people got it right?
Okay. So if we end that poll.
Share results.
Okay.
That's
so you
weird.
Can see those results there. I'll just go through and give you the answers to those questions, just so you get a sense of the scale at which Loaves and Fishes is working. So the answer to the first question, how much food does Loaves and Fishes collect each month, is around 150,000 kilograms every single month. So obviously lots of food coming in, and obviously a huge amount of logistics required to make that happen. Now, the next question is, what do we distribute each month? And so this is a question of how much food are we actually providing out to people? And the answer to that question is 120,000 kilograms. And so that's the amount of food that is actually good, because a lot of the food that we get in is not suitable for human consumption. And so that leads into our next question. How much food do we provide to local farmers or for compost each month? And that's approximately 40,000 kilograms each month. So there, just a little bit of trivia for you that sums up where Loaves and Fishes is now, just in terms of the volume of food that we're handling on a monthly basis. So I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to share my screen here. That one. Share slideshow from beginning. Okay, I'm assuming everyone's got that. Now, I don't know how much you know about food banking, but historically, food banking has been defined around scarcity. And that scarcity narrative has really revolved around there being a huge need in the community in terms of people who need support to meet their basic food needs, combined with this idea that there actually isn't enough food for all these people to eat. And so an appeal is made out to the community to provide food and funds so that people can be fed. What we have discovered as a food bank is that that narrative of scarcity is actually wrong. There is actually an abundance of food available. And I've actually come to realize that I actually think there is more food available to be eaten than we have people to actually eat it. And I'm going to share a little bit with you on how we came to this place of abundance and have been able to shift our narrative from one of scarcity to one of abundance. When we look at the world around us, there are no shortage of problems. There's no shortage of issues that we see, challenges that we face. But as we look at those things, we want to be careful that we don't just see them as problems, and we see them as potential opportunities. And so I want to share with you two specific problems that we as an organization have seen in the world, and how we saw one of those problems is actually an opportunity to solve the other. And so the first problem that I want to look at is the issue of food waste. It's been estimated that half of the food that we produce is actually wasted. So that means it doesn't get consumed by people. And so to just put a figure on that, here in North America, it's estimated that 408 pounds of food is wasted per person every year. And so here in Nanaimo, that works out to over 32 million pounds of food wasted just in Nanaimo alone. Now, if we assign that a dollar value, again, just here in Nanaimo, that's almost $90 million worth of food every year in Nanaimo that gets wasted. So if we're wasting $90 million worth of food, while at the same time we're saying there's a scarcity of food, we really need to look at that and say, can we do better? I was recently talking to a local grocery store manager, and he told me that when you look around a grocery store, 10% of the produce that you see in there will be thrown out. And in fact, it could be even higher. But there is significant food waste that is happening. Now, when we look at food waste, there is a lot that goes into it. And when we look at it, we tend to think of what we see. So the big pile of food that perhaps is being thrown out into a dumpster, and we imagine that food ending up in a landfill. And obviously, that is a huge problem. But simply seeing that food and seeing that food go into the landfill does not tell the whole story of everything that is wasted when that food ends up in the landfill. There's an incredible amount of work and energy that went into getting that food to the place where it is. And that includes labor, energy, transportation, and all the items that you see there at the lower half of the screen. And so food waste isn't just about what ends up in the landfill. It's about wasting all of the resources that went into creating the food in the first place. And those wasted resources and that wasted food has huge environmental impact. As I said, there's the environmental impact around that food ending up in the landfill. But increasingly, we are becoming aware of the environmental impact this has in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's been estimated that in Canada, there are 56.6 million tons of CO2 gas equivalent that is released every year just because of food waste. This calculation has also been done to show that we've got 1.4 billion tons of water that is wasted every year in Canada to produce that food which is wasted. So obviously we have a huge problem with all of this food waste. So that's the first problem that we as a society are facing. There's a second problem I want to look at, and that is the problem of hunger. Here in Nanaimo, in the last year, over 7,000 different people have accessed services directly from Loaves and Fishes Food Bank. So this does not include all the people who access services from other nonprofits to which we supply food to. This is just the people who come directly to us to help meet their basic food needs. That works out to about 1 in 13 people in Nanaimo needing to use the food bank at some point in the year. And of these people, approximately a third of them are children. So obviously, this is a huge concern. Food is a basic necessity. It is something that everyone needs, not only to live, but to thrive. And we have an obligation as a community to make sure that everyone in our community has food to eat. So we looked at these two problems, one of food waste and one people being hungry. And we realized that the food waste problem is actually a huge opportunity. It is an opportunity for us to access that food and make sure that that food does not go to waste and instead is provided to people in need. And the primary way that we go about doing this is through our food recovery program. And what our food recovery program is it's a partnership with local grocery stores whereby we provide 7-day-a-week pickup for all of the food that they are throwing out. And the way we look at this is through the food recovery pyramid. And what this does is it shows us the ways that are best for reducing food waste. And so the first thing that we want to do to reduce food waste is we want to reduce it at the retail level. So one of the common things that we'll hear is, why are these grocery stores throwing out so much food? They shouldn't be throwing that out. They should be doing a better job of making sure that there isn't food waste. I can assure you that when I talk to not only store managers, but national level VPs with various food groups, they are committed to reducing food waste at the retail level. And I think it's important for us to understand where this food waste actually comes from at the retail level. Imagine it's 9 o'clock at night and you go to the grocery store and you want to buy a loaf of bread. And you go to the store and there are only 2 loaves of bread on that rack. They might have the bread that you want, but a part of you is going to go, well, I want some choice here. I want to see all the options and then I want to take my pick. The net result of those choices that we make as consumers mean that there will be food waste. The grocery stores are trying to manage that, but the fact is, when we show up at the grocery store as consumers, our choices mean that there will be food waste. Another example, think about milk. You go to buy milk out of the fridge and you look at the dates and you get the one that has the longest time until the best before date. That choice means that there will be food waste. The other example, think of strawberries. You look through the strawberries and there'll be one mushy one in the pack. I don't think anyone is going to buy that one when there is a good one sitting there right beside it. And if they didn't have the good one there beside it, we would complain about the produce there at that store, and then we would go to a different one. So I think we want to be careful when we assign blame for why we have so much food waste, and really take a strong look at the decisions that we make as individual consumers and our contribution to the food waste that we see as a community. So back to the food recovery pyramid, the first thing that we want to do is reduce food waste at the start. But given that there is going to be food waste, the next thing that we want to do is do everything we can to get that food to people who can use it. And this is where our Food for You food recovery program comes in. As I mentioned, we provide 7-day-a-week pickup, and we accept everything that these grocery stores are throwing out. We supply them with the bins to put the food in. Our staff show up, we pick the food up, and we bring it back to our warehouse. At our warehouse, our volunteers sort through all of that food to make sure that the good food goes to people. The food that is not good is provided to local farmers. And so we have farmers that come to our warehouse and pick up food that they can then use. Now we do get more food than we have farmers to take, and so we have a number of partnerships, specifically with GFL and Convertus, to actually take the food that has had the packaging removed from it and have it composted. And then as a last resort, we do send some food to the landfill. And as you'll see later on, this is typically the food that we are not able to get all of the packaging separated off from it. So our goal is to take the food that is surplus or wasted at the retail level and make sure that it goes to its highest and best use. So how do we do this? First, food goes to people. In 2020, there was almost 1.1 million kilograms of food that we provided directly to people in need. This is our first priority. We want to do everything we can to maximize the volume of food that is available to people in need. Now we do this through distribution through our depots, not only here in Nanaimo, but on Northern Vancouver Island, up in Port Hardy. And then we also supply food to over 100 nonprofits, schools, and Indigenous communities on Vancouver Island. Because there is an abundance of food, we are able to make sure that food is available to these other groups to use. Now, we collect all this food, but a significant amount of it is not suitable for human consumption. And so in 2020, there was 438,000 kilograms of food that we provided to local farmers. And you can see here by these pictures just some of the scale that we're working on. You can see in the bottom left there, a farmer showing up with a flat deck truck, and that truck we can fit up to 8 pallets of food on it. You can see up there in the top right, the sorts of bins that we're using. And then on the bottom right, you can see some of the creative ways farmers have gone to make sure that they can actually handle the volume of food that is available to them. So we're really appreciative of our farmer partners because them taking that food away saves us on disposal fees. Now, we do get food that the farmers don't want or more than they're able to take. And so we make every effort to compost this food. And so a lot of the food that we're composting are bread items, but there are other items that farmers tend not to want, which include citrus, potatoes, and onions. They tend to be things that the farm animals don't want. And so we work with our partners at GFL and Convertus to actually get that food composted instead of going to the landfill. And then 2020, approximately 40,000 kilograms. But we do have some food that does end up in the landfill. Now, I don't share this with you because I'm proud of it. I share this with you because this is just the reality of the work that we do. And there's just a few examples of the sorts of stuff that ends up in the landfill. You can see there's a crab, and one of the challenges is they've got the elastics on it. It's pinchers, so it tends to be packaging, which makes it difficult. And you might be looking at that and going, "Oh, you just take that off, and then you can compost it." The challenge that we have is actually having the resources to do all of that, not only in terms of staff, but more importantly with volunteers. It's an incredible amount of work. And the other issue that we run into with it is it can often be quite gross work because the food has deteriorated to a point that it's not suitable for people to eat. Now, that said, we are always looking for options and ways that we can reduce this amount of food that ends up in the landfill, but it is a reality that we do face. Now, as we look at this system and we look at the impact that it has huge benefit to our environment, not only in terms of the amount of food that doesn't end up in the landfill, but also in terms of the huge benefit in terms of reduced greenhouse gas emissions. And so the estimate that we've done is that in 2020, the 1.2 million kilograms of food that we recovered resulted in 2,378.4 metric tons of CO2 equivalent from not being released into the atmosphere. That is obviously a huge accomplishment for our community here in Nanaimo, and it's an accomplishment that we are proud of, and we want to make sure that this success is recognized not only by our community, but by other communities, because it's success that they too can enjoy. Now, over the years, we have seen a dramatic increase in the food that we are able to provide. And so what you see here is the amount of food that we have made available to the community on an annual basis. And the important thing to note here is that 2012 was the year that we launched our food recovery program. And so you see an immediate jump from $800,000 worth of food up to 1.3 million. And as you go through the years, you can see that there is a steady and consistent increase in the amount of food that is available. And you might be surprised to know that 2020 actually brought the hugest opportunities. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we were obviously very concerned as to how we were going to adapt and what we were going to do. And we discovered that we were able to tap into the restaurant supply chain. So with all restaurants, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but many restaurants closing or operating at reduced capacity, there was a huge opportunity to tap into that supply chain. And so we had a 3.5-month run through the summer of 2020, where we were receiving between 7,000 and 9,000 dozen eggs every single week. We also tapped into an abundance of salmon that had been farmed not only on the North Island here on Vancouver Island, but off of a land-based fish farm in Cedar, and also tapped into salmon farmed in New Brunswick. We received over 35 pallets of canned salmon and an additional 25 pallets of frozen salmon. This was all fish that was destined for restaurants, and through various different programs, we were able to tap into that and accept that food and make sure that it got put to its highest and best use. There are many other examples of food that we were able to tap into in 2020. Including bread and dairy items. The other thing that I would point out on this graph is the steady growth that you will see in the amount of food provided to other nonprofits. So if you look in 2020, you can see $1.7 million worth of food was provided to these other groups. The idea is we have all of this infrastructure and know-how in place. And there is no sense in these other agencies recreating all of that infrastructure when they can just come to us and get that food free of charge. The other thing that we are exploring with this is actually delivering food to these other agencies. One of the challenges they have is actually getting to our warehouse to access it. And then once they do access it, having the ability to actually handle the volume of food that is available. So all of this growth has meant that Loaves and Fishes Food Bank in Nanaimo has expanded its geographical reach. We serve as Food Banks BC's hub for Vancouver Island. And so that means that we're supplying food to 19 other food banks on Vancouver Island. We are also the food bank on Northern Vancouver Island. And so every Wednesday, we drive up to Northern Vancouver Island, and on alternate Wednesdays, we run a depot in Port Hardy. And in the days that we're not in Port Hardy, we drive to Port McNeill and we supply food to other agencies up there. All of this has been made possible because of the generosity of our community and the abundance of food that is available that we've been able to tap into. Now, a lot of the work that we do attracts attention from other communities. They see the results on what we've achieved and they want to learn more. They want to come and see what we're doing. And they come and they see the equipment that we have in place and they'll say, wow, if we had all of this equipment, we could do this too. And I'm always quick to point out what we started with. These here are photos that were taken in 2011, which show the original 500 square foot warehouse that we started with. This is a facility that was built in 1913. It was old, dilapidated, it needed to be rebuilt. And we recognized that we needed to do things differently. And so we got to work on doing that. But one of the challenges is you have to be prepared to think differently, and you need to be prepared to make some changes in the way that you operate. And so as we as a community look at how we are going to transition to a place where everyone has food to eat, where we have the appropriate infrastructure that doesn't have the environmental impact. As we look at achieving the goals that Transition Nanaimo has laid out, I think we really need to take a close look at our approach and where we start from and where we decide to get started. And I think or the reason I start with this picture here is I want to encourage us to start with what we have. We need to have dreams for the future, but I think it's also important to recognize that there are things that we can do right now. And I want to just share with you a bit of the steps that we took, and specifically the attitude that we took to making sure we could get to where we are today. So there were some building blocks that we needed to have in place to launch our food recovery program in 2012. And the first building block was a truck that we already had. We've now got a fleet of trucks, but it's important to remember that we started with one truck, and it was this truck. The next thing we needed was bins to actually collect the food. So if you're going to go out to the grocery stores and offer them 7-day-a-week pickup, you have to have something for them to actually put the food in. And so we had one of the local Rotary clubs actually invest $4,000 with us to go and buy bins so that we could launch our food recovery program. Now, as you can imagine, if you take food and you put it into these bins, it's going to get a little dirty, and you have to have a way to wash those bins. And so we were fortunate to have this hose at the side of the building where we were able to get those bins cleaned out. And then we had to make sure that we had a mechanism to actually move this food out on a regular basis. So prior to launching our food recovery program, we were open to clients 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday. And we recognized that if we were going to be collecting all this perishable food, we had to have a mechanism to move food out on the weekends. And so we opened a depot that is open at Generations Church on Saturday morning. And this was a strategic decision to make sure that we had a place for all of this food to be distributed throughout the week. But perhaps the biggest thing we needed was to have the right attitude and approach, because it might seem obvious that food recovery should be done, but the actual implementation of a food recovery program takes a lot of work, and there are a lot of things to overcome. And I think it was our attitude and approach to that problem that really was key to our success. So I want to share some of these key attitudes and approaches that informed what we did. And the first one is we're prepared to make mistakes. So I mentioned to you that we spent $4,000 to buy bins to launch our food recovery program. That was the first purchase we made for our food recovery program, and it was wrong. That was $4,000 worth of bins that were way too big. Now, did we fold and stop? No, but we learned from that. And now when we talk to other food banks and agencies that want to set up food recovery programs, we're able to tell them these are the right bins to buy. We learned that the hard way, but we didn't let that stop us from continuing. You will make mistakes. And so as Nanaimo looks to transition to becoming a more environmentally conscious community, there's going to be mistakes made, and that's all right. Mistakes happen when you're pushing and you're trying to do things in a new way. And so we need to make sure that we don't get down on ourselves for making those mistakes, and we continue on and keep pursuing the goals that we have. The second attitude, and it really is related to this first one, is taking on risk. In 2012, we stopped making $10,000 worth of, or $10,000 a month worth of milk purchases. The safest thing that a food bank can do is take donors' money and go buy food. No one is going to criticize a food bank for doing that, except me. I think this is a very bad return on investment. It is a safe return, but it is not something that is going to yield long-term benefit. So one of the questions we get asked is, well, how do you afford to pay for this equipment and the extra staff wages required to make a food recovery program work? And the way we initially funded this was we stopped making food purchases. This is obviously a huge risk because the community, isn't necessarily going to support that. But we've been able to show that the results of our investment, instead of buying this milk, have resulted in dramatically more food available to people in need. And so as we look at making the changes that we need to make as a community, we need to take some calculated risks, because if we don't take some risks, if we don't kind of push the limit, we're not going to get to where we need to be. Now, as we make those, take those risks on, there will be mistakes, but we do need to keep pushing on to get to the goals we've set. Now, the next item is specifically a challenge to food banks. And this was a fundamental shift in terms of the way food banks operate. We accept all food regardless of condition. And what this means is that we want to compete with the dumpster at the local grocery stores. Now, I have heard time and time again from food banks that they don't want to be a dumping ground for the food industry. We are a dumping ground. We solve problems for them. They have food that needs to go somewhere because it is blocking up their chain. And so we provide them with a cost-effective way of actually disposing of that food. Now, what that means is that we get lots of disgusting food. And so you can see here, these are some actual photos of food that we have received from local grocery stores. And I don't show this to you to shame these stores. I show this to you to show you the reality of the program that we're running. And we don't have any problem with this. Now, we try to get all of this food to its highest and best use, but it does mean that from time to time, we have to take food to the dump to dispose of it because our chain has backed up. So sometimes when we're embarking on an ambitious plan and setting high, lofty goals, it will seem like we're taking backward steps. And taking backward steps of taking food to the dump can be a challenge for food banks to do, but it's a necessary one in order to keep the program running. The fourth attitude is one of just figuring it out. And the example I want to show to you is the cooler that we actually use for all of the food coming through our facility right now. This is a cooler that came out of the regional recycling building on Old Victoria Road. Prior to being regional recycling, it was the Richardson Food Group. And so there were a number of coolers in there. And regional recycling got in touch with us and said, you know, could you use a larger cooler? We said, absolutely. And I went over and I looked at the cooler and it was the perfect size. It was 17 feet long or wide, 26 feet long, and 14 feet tall. And I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what we need for our new warehouse. I went and spoke to our refrigeration guy. He looked at it and he said, this is a total waste of time. By the time you pay me to take this apart and set it up, it'd be cheaper to buy a new one. And I said, well, what if we took it apart with volunteers and set it up again? Would that work? And he said, you're absolutely crazy. There is no way that you'll be able to do that. And I said, well, how about you give us a week and we'll try and do that. We went into that the regional recycling building on Old Victoria Road, and we took that cooler apart panel by panel, and we got it rebuilt in our warehouse. Total cost to make that happen was less than $5,000. It took a lot of figuring out and sticking to it and a lot of elbow grease, but we made it happen. And so can't is not really in our vocabulary. Figure it out is. The next attitude that I want to look at, and this is specifically related to us as a food bank, but it's this idea that equipment does not equal growth. Growth equals equipment. And what I mean by this is we can often think that we need to go buy the equipment so that we can grow. What we've done is taken our equipment and run it really hard and shown that we need more equipment. And what this has allowed us to do is appeal to funders by showing them what we are already doing. And by showing them what we're already doing, they are eager to invest with us to leverage our expertise and our experience to achieve even more. So the equipment that you're probably most aware of from us is our vehicles. Currently, we have 6 vehicles that are out on the road. We've got another 2 5-ton trucks that are on the way. We run this equipment hard. We look after it, but we make sure that it is being used to maximum efficiency so that we can achieve maximum results. This also means that we are always eager to make new investments, take on some risks, and try some new things. And so I just want to share a few pieces of equipment that we have acquired over the years and the difference that it has made. So first off, may seem relatively simple. I mentioned the bins that we acquired to start. We started with 40 bins. And we now have a program that relies on over 1,800 bins, and we get them from a variety of sources. But what we've done is we've looked at the food industry and which bins are actually used within that industry and made sure that we had them. So that picture you see on the left, those are actually produce trays that are used at farms. And those actually are manufactured in Langley. And then the blue bins that you see in the back, those are the bins that we actually collect the food in now. So it's similar to the first bins we bought, but a little bit smaller. The picture on the right shows what we call our sleigh. This is a big hopper where we can dump food that's going to be composted in, and then our forklift can pick it up so that we can dump it into the appropriate compost bin. So significant investments made in infrastructure here just to handle the volume of food that is available. Now, I mentioned when we started, we had a hose at the side of our building that we used to clean the bins. Things have improved considerably since then. We now have an industrial bin washer. This is a dishwasher that came out of the cafeteria at UVic. This machine is 21 feet long and has made a major difference in our operations. When we were washing bins by hand, we would get between 30 and 40 bins washed an hour. This machine here can do between 180 and 250 bins an hour, depending on who's operating it. One of the things too that I like about this is, just like our cooler that was recovered out of another facility, this was recovered from, as I mentioned, from the University of Victoria. It's a significant investment, but we were fortunate to get funding from Food Banks Canada in the amount of $40,000 to get this critical piece of equipment to handle all the needs that we have as an organization. Now, all of this expansion has led to a point where we are at a critical point as we look to the future. These here are pictures of our warehouse that were taken earlier this week. And just to give you a sense of scale, that picture on the left, you'll see there is a stack of 4 pallets. Those are all chickpeas. If you look at the picture on the right, you'll see there's a stack of 3 pallets. That is all tomato sauce. So our food recovery program started by tapping into food at the local level, but this is food that we are tapping into on the national level. And as you can see, our warehouse space is at a real premium. We actually get to the point where you can't actually move around because there is so much food in there. And so we have a need for a much larger facility. Currently, we're in a 6,000 square foot facility, and we are looking to build a 29,000 square foot warehouse. Now, the main reason for this is so that we can handle even more food, but also having a bigger space will allow us to sort the food better. As we sort through food, we need to have the space so that we can actually spread it out. When we look at the perishable food that we're recovering, often what we're doing is we're just taking all of the produce and sorting it between 2 categories, good or bad. And what we would like to do is to be able to sort at a more granular level so that we can put all the carrots together, all the peppers together, all the potatoes together, which will mean that we can not only serve our clients better, but we'll be able to provide better service to the other nonprofits that are accessing food from us. The other thing that a larger facility will enable us to do is to better handle our recycling. So you noticed in some of those pictures, some of the stuff that was going to the dump was stuff that could clearly be recycled if we were able to get it cleaned. and if we had the space to actually properly sort it. So we anticipate with a larger facility, we'll be able to do a better job of handling the waste that we do generate. And so, as we look to the future, we have identified this property here on East Wellington Road as the place where we would like to build a new warehouse. We have this property under contract for purchase right now, and we are working to remove our conditions by April 7th, with us taking possession of it on May 7th. The goal will be to build a warehouse that looks something like that. It will be basically a big box that's 290 feet long and 100 feet wide to give us the space that we need. This is obviously an ambitious goal, but we are working with various levels of government to make this a reality. The Regional District of Nanaimo has recognized the tremendous environmental benefit that Loaves and Fishes Food Recovery Program has, and has committed $95,000 toward the purchase of this land. Obviously, we're going to need significantly more than that. We're currently working with the City of Nanaimo, and I will be presenting to the City of Nanaimo Finance Committee next Wednesday to request funding to help with the purchase of this property. And then we are also working with our provincial government to request funding for the construction of a warehouse. We don't have a completed budget for the construction of the warehouse yet. We're still in the process of selecting a design build firm, but we are hopeful in the coming weeks that we will have a better sense of what the total overall budget for this project is. Now, you may have seen our presence on this property. We've got 3 tents set up there, and we are currently leasing half of this property from the current owner. And we are using this for our Empties for Food program. As you can imagine, Loaves and Fishes Food Bank needs a significant amount of money to keep our operations going. And our Empties for Food program is a huge part of how we raise the money to keep our operations going. This program is a program whereby we do an ongoing bottle drive throughout the community. And one of the many things that I love about this program is it takes skills, abilities, and equipment that we already have and deploys them to generate revenue. And so I just want to show you specifically what I mean by that. If you look at our food recovery program, we go out into the community and we collect food. We do this with bins and trucks. When you look at our Empties for Food program, we have bins where people can drop off their empties. And then we have trucks that go out and collect that food, or sorry, collect those empties. Those empties are then brought back to our warehouse. Well, guess what? A warehouse is where we bring all the food and we sort it with volunteers. And so our Empties program relies on those same systems that we've developed for sorting food. Now, once we collect all of the food, we distribute that food to individual clients and to other agencies. And so our Empties for Food program takes the empties to regional recycling, and we get paid out by them. The results of this program are absolutely staggering. It was launched in 2018 and it brought in $40,000 in revenue. It grew to $80,000 in revenue in 2019 and then expanded dramatically over 2020 to over $220,000. We anticipate in 2021, this program bringing in $300,000 to help with our ongoing operations with us as a food bank. This Empties program not only provides a huge financial benefit to us, but it is also part of our environmental stewardship. This program helps ensure that empties actually get recycled. Regional Recycling is our partner in this. They have actually supplied all of the bins that are used for that. Currently, we have 30 bins that are placed around the community. Each one of those bins are worth about $2,000 each. Regional Recycling wants to partner with us to do this because it increases the amount of recycling that happens. Their goal is to reduce what ends up in the landfill and what gets recovered. And this partnership is a good way for them to achieve those goals, while at the same time allowing us to generate much needed revenue for our programs. So I've covered a lot of different things here, but what I've tried to show is that we have been an organization that has been creative. We haven't shied away from trying new things. And we've been willing to roll up our sleeves and get down to work and make a difference in our community. And so with that, I thank you for your time. And if there are any questions or comments, I would be happy to take them now.
Wonderful. That's amazing, Peter. Wow, I am just totally blown away. I actually felt even moved to tears at one point. I just really want to acknowledge you for all the incredible work. I heard that when you took it over, you completely transformed Loaves and Fishes, and you are such a blessing to our community. Thank you so much. I actually, to kick off our discussion and Q&A, I want to call upon the Right Honorable Paul Manley, our MP. He wasn't able to make it to the opening session for his comments, so I'd love to call upon him now, Paul, if you're willing to,
sure.
Yeah, add your comments. Yeah.
I'm not the Right Honorable, just the Honorable.
Oh, sorry, I got
They
myself.
reserve that for ministers of the Crown and the Prime Minister and former ministers. But yeah, no, I'm pleased to be here, and it was great to see Peter's presentation. And Loaves and Fishes does such amazing work. I was really fired up when I saw the food recovery warehouse process, and was really happy to get a group of seniors that I was working with fired up about that process too, to make the film Abundance, which you can see on YouTube, which covers the whole thing. It's great to be here. I'm sorry I missed this morning. I was on house duty and had a petition to table, and questions to ask about Bill C-24. So lots of stuff going on here in my Zoom parliament in Nanaimo on Dunsmuir Street. But thank you for putting on this event. I can see there's some great presentations that are happening, so I'll tune in when I can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Manley. All right. So if there's any questions, for Peter, you can post those in the chat, or you can raise your hand. You can raise your hand by pressing the reactions button and then clicking the raise hand, or you can, if some of you have it in your participants, if you click participants and next to your name is a raise hand. So Robin has her hand raised. Robin, do you want to unmute yourself? And
am I unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, I still have the big thank you on there. I was just wondering, the cans of food that you showed, of the tomato sauces and the chickpeas and whatnot, are they expired, or are they still, like, what's the expiration date? And where I'm leading to this is, if the expiration date is still good, I'm thinking that community, like our place in Souk has been, several people have been talking about forming a co-op. And I'm wondering if there might be co-ops around the island that might be able to buy some of that food as part of a fundraiser for your organization.
Okay, so a couple comments on that. Thank you for the question. That food, specifically the canned chickpeas and pasta sauce, the best before dates on that, I believe, are like 2024, 2025. That is recovered food that came through an Agriculture Canada program, whereby Agriculture Canada was paying for surplus food that farmers had to be processed. And then once it was processed, was sent to food banks across the country for distribution. So it's recovered, but it's recovered food that's had a significant investment made into it. Now, to your point, could it be sold to co-ops for distribution? The short answer to that is no. That food gets distributed to food banks with the intention that it will be given away to those who are in need.
Great, thank you. I hope that answered your question, Robin. There's a couple questions in the chat. So Dawn asked, have you considered getting a bioreactor? It would convert food waste that would go to landfill into biofuel to power LNF operations, or that could be sold for revenues. Have you considered that? That sounds intriguing.
I spent an afternoon looking at those machines, online, and was like, wow, this stuff is cool. But at this point, we've got other options for dealing with it. The machines we're looking at were very, very expensive. But that said, we're always open to trying new things. So if anyone has expertise in that and is like, hey, like, this is the machine and it'll do it, like, let me know, because as we make these investments in a larger warehouse, we want to make sure that we get it right, and we plan to have the right equipment in place to handle what's out there.
Yeah, I love your attitude about taking risks and trying new things and being willing to expand. And I really feel that about you. There's an innovative energy about you and what you're up to, Peter. That's great. So I'm sorry if I get your name wrong. Hadis asks, do volunteers receive a bag of recovered food on top of community building contribution volunteer hours experience?
No. So we want people to first volunteer with us to give back to the community. One of the challenges that food banks encounter is when there is a regular and ongoing thank you of food going back to volunteers, it creates challenges, particularly where clients will be like, oh, well, why did that person get it? It's supposed to be for me. So we have a policy that our volunteers are not able to access the food that we recover.
Yeah, that makes sense. Christine has her hand raised. Christine, did you want to unmute yourself? And
yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Peter. I have a background in humanitarian aid, so I can absolutely relate to the logistical aspect of your work and what you're trying to achieve. I am presently doing a food security report for our region in Souk, and I am struggling a little bit with regards to food banks, in the sense that how this has grown, right? We've often always had food banks, and how it started in England in the 80s and how it grew and how it became bigger and the reasons behind it. What are your thoughts around, and you are expanding as well, like more and more. So I'm just trying to figure from your end, like how, if everyone could afford food, would this cure this need to be reliant on food banks, or how do you see this? Could you explain further?
Yeah, I mean, if people have enough money and don't need a food bank, that is obviously the best solution. But while there is a need and people don't have enough food to eat, we're available to help people. Now, given that need is there, we want to do everything we can to help those people. And that means we're going to be innovative, and we're going to look at what the opportunities are for meeting that need. But as we keep our eyes on the goal of actually reducing the need, we look at the role that we as a food bank play in the broader nonprofit system. And that's why we supply food to all these other nonprofits. This allows them to save money on their bills, which means they can do more and better work because of the free food that they have received from us. As they do more and better work, the thought is there will be fewer people who need to use a food bank. Now, one of the things that often gets said, and I think you alluded to it, was that food banks started in the 80s. What I'm going to say here is a little bit controversial, but I think it's defensible. I think food banks were an innovation that adapted to a community need that was there well before food banks showed up. If there was a food bank in 1950 or a food bank in 1850, I'm sure there were people who would have used it. So what a food bank is a way is one way for a community to pool its resources to care for people. And that's why many food banks originated out of churches, as churches looked at, well, how can we care for people? Now, they really got going in the 80s because there was a need that grew. So it was a response to that. But I think it's important to recognize that food banks could have been used by society well before the time that they actually showed up.
Thank you for the clarification, Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. So there's a few questions in the chat. Lori asked, the cruise industry in Vancouver donated a lot of food during the summer of 2020. Did Loaves and Fishes receive any of that food?
Not that I'm aware of, but our answer is always yes. No, so like, for example, we got over 35 pallets of canned salmon, and I got a phone call from someone in Ontario who had a logistical problem. They had a tractor trailer load of fish that they just needed gone, and everywhere they were calling was like, well, I'll take 5, but I'll take 3. And I'm like, yep, we'll take it all, done. And so if a cruise ship called us and said, we've got food here in Vancouver, will you take it? The answer is yes. In fact, last week we went to Vancouver and picked up 10 pallets of frozen food from the Greater Vancouver Food Bank because they had extra food. And this was food that it was salmon that had been prepared by the Canucks executive chef team, and they were just running out of space. And I'm like, fine. So we sent the truck over and loaded it up and brought the food back. So this week at Loaves and Fishes, there are salmon dinners for all.
Wow, amazing. Wow. Terry's asking, does the federal government have a fund or funds you can tap into? Is Paul still here?
I don't know, Paul. Yes, they do.
I would say apply for whatever you can find, and I'll write letters of support.
My observation and our experience has been that we don't tap directly into the federal government. The federal government provides broad funding to groups that then provide that money to us. And as an example, like 10 minutes before this started, I got an email from Food Banks Canada saying our application for funding to go towards purchasing another 5-ton truck had just been approved for $150,000. That $150,000 will come from Food Banks Canada, but that Food Banks Canada got that money from Agriculture Canada. So there's these intermediaries. So I don't want to throw the federal government under the bus and say they haven't given anything to us. The avenues that they've made money available, we've been able to tap into, and that applies to the provincial government too.
That's great. Good to hear. And I'm sure there's more that we can tap into as this movement is growing and the need is growing as well. Susanna has her hand up. Susanna, did you want to?
Yes. Hi. I'm wondering, do the people have choice on what they can take? And the other question is, how do you get people to try things they've never eaten before? Like, I imagine they're very familiar with some of the like mac and cheese kind of things, but maybe not chickpeas. So how do you get people's diets a little bit more wide so that you don't waste the unusual foods?
Yeah, no, great question. So prior to COVID, clients had choice. So they came through and they would shop and pick the foods that were most appropriate for them. With COVID-19, we've had to adapt just to ensure that we're able to distribute food in a safe way. And so we've bagged a good part of the food and moved back to a system where there is less client choice, but we still offer some choice as we are able to safely accommodate that. Now, to your other question, how do you get people to try things new? First, we have amazing volunteers on the front end. Well, actually, all our volunteers are amazing, but we've got these really great volunteers interacting with clients, and they'll talk with them like, hey, you know, this is a way you can prepare this potato or try this. And they develop these relationships, right? Like, hey, you should try this, you should try that, or I have no idea what this is, why don't you try it? So there's that. On more of an organizational level, this is why it's so important that we partner with groups like Nanaimo Community Kitchens, because these are groups that are doing that type of work that teach people how to use the food. So one of the things that, you know, we really value is recognizing where our area of expertise ends and other organizations begins. We're really good at the logistical handling of food, and we want to look after that and then equip these other nonprofits to go do what they do really well. And often what happens, particularly in food banks, is they'll just start taking on more and more of these things because there's more that can always be done. And our approach is to stay in our lane and really respect the lane that others are in and equip them to do the work that they're doing.
Thank you. Good to hear that, because I don't want the more health-oriented foods to go to waste because people aren't familiar with them.
Right. And if you keep an eye on our social media feed, occasionally we'll post something where we're like, what is this? Because it's so weird, like we just don't know what it is. And usually we can get an answer.
That's great. That's one great thing about social media is you can tap into and get information from other people. Tamara is asking, would food banks be an intervention site to educate people on growing food or accessing community gardens?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things, or one of the ways that we work with other agencies is we provide them an avenue to connect with clients. So with COVID-19, that mostly takes place through distribution of flyers. So we're working with VIU and they're putting flyers in the hampers. And that's specifically a program related to getting funding for kids for post-secondary education. But I was actually in touch with someone at Nanaimo Food Share Society this week, and they've got a seniors food mentoring program that they wanted to get the word out. And I said, hey, you know, if you want to, provide flyers, we'll put them in there. Pre-COVID, we've worked with groups where they'll actually set up a table at our distribution sites and clients can come in. So we offer an opportunity for these groups to connect and meet our clients as we see that as being possible.
That's wonderful. Wow. Yeah, and Dawn is asking, if Central Vancouver Island was to increase its local food production significantly, would Loaves and Fishes be able to help with recovery distribution?
So do you mean if there was food that they needed gone, we would take it and distribute it?
I guess so.
Yeah,
I don't know,
the
Dawn,
answer is yes. If you've got food and you need it gone, we'll take it, always.
Did you want to clarify anything else about that, Dawn, or anything else? Is that?
No, it's just more in terms of one of the things I heard in some of the conversations is sometimes for food growers, it's hard to actually get the food moved or getting it out to, especially CSA models, getting the food from them to the ultimate consumers.
Yeah. Yeah, if there was one idea that came up in session one is that if the basic needs were covered, what government covered the basic needs of everyone, then we could just distribute food to people without that need of the, of covering the cost. It would just be covered already by the government. So let's hope that that is.
One option that goes to my head, and this wouldn't really apply to Nanaimo, but our trucks, they're going all over Vancouver Island, and most often they're returning to Nanaimo empty. So if you've got, say, a farmer in the Comox Valley is trying to get stuff, to consumers in Nanaimo, the truck is coming back empty. We load the pallets on, we can bring it. So, I mean, we're always, willing to look at what those options are. We've worked with organizations to take food and supplies from Nanaimo North, most notably the United Way and Nanaimo Food Share. And we're happy to do that as we have space, but I think the real opportunity is coming the other way. I mean, a number of people I've heard from here are from Souk. I don't know if there's people from other areas on Vancouver Island, but we're always looking for ways to gain efficiency and move product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. I guess that kind of answers this question from Robin, because you said the trucks often come empty from other areas of the island. So are the grocery stores from all over the island contributing, or just those in Nanaimo?
So currently our food recovery program operates in Nanaimo and Ladysmith. One of the things that we were very careful is we want to make sure that as we're recovering food in other communities, we have an invitation from that community to come there. And so we worked very closely with the Ladysmith Food Bank. We supply them with weekly deliveries of food. And they, in turn, asked us to run our food recovery program out of the Save on Foods in Ladysmith. We look at where we are on the island and the way our system works, and we could really do food recovery in any community within an hour-and-a-half drive of Nanaimo, but that's contingent on the invitation coming from the community. So we're not going to go to one of these other communities, go talk to the grocery store and say, hey, you got to get us in here. And everyone's like, what are you doing here? So we need that invitation. But as those invitations come, we're certainly willing to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds respectful and not stepping on toes. Someone is asking, are you looking into electric vehicles? That's a good question.
As we design our new warehouse, someone's mentioned that we should make sure we've got charging capacity for them. So that's something we've considered. I would love to have a Tesla truck here, but I haven't seen anything yet. And that's not to say it doesn't exist that's feasible for that. But if something exists, we're certainly willing to look at it. Great.
I love that you're orienting towards that and thinking ahead, planning for that. That's great. So this same person says, they didn't say quality foods in your retail stores you recover food from. Are they working with someone else to recover food waste? Or what do you know about quality foods?
That'd be a question for them to answer.
Okay, so you aren't partnering with them.
We do get some food from them, but they are not on our 7-day-a-week pickup schedule.
Mm-hmm. That would be a good question to pose to them. Terry's asking, how does one qualify to receive food?
We are a low barrier food bank. The only thing that we require is ID for each person that we're providing food for. So when someone comes to us, they provide ID for each person in their household. And then for the next 6 months, any person in that household can pick up for the entire household. We don't have any requirement that people show they live in Nanaimo. If they're here at one of our depots, we'll serve them. And we certainly don't ask for any financial information. And that's really important because we want people to be able to get food when they need it and not have a bunch of barriers.
Mm-hmm.
It does mean that, you know, people will ask questions like, well, is that person really supposed to be here? We say if someone's there, they've decided they need it. And it's not always the person in need who shows up. I'm aware of a number of situations where people won't come to the food bank, but their friends will come and their friends will register, and we're supplying food to someone who doesn't need it, but they're taking that food and giving it to their friend who really does.
That's wonderful, Peter. I love that you're making it really easily accessible and not requiring people to jump through a bunch of hoops. And it also allows for dignity, right? You know.
Well, the other thing is, because we have the problems of abundance, we actually need people to take the food away, right?
Right?
So
Exactly.
many of these barriers that food banks have put in place have come about in part because they're operating out of a place of scarcity. And so you want to make sure that it gets to the people who most need it. But when your problem is there's just food everywhere and we need it to go, it's like, okay, well, let's just move the food out.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. I love it. Paul has offered a link, a resource, so that'll be saved, and I'll pass it on to you, Peter, for some funding.
Thank you, Paul.
He said it won't fund a new building, but it will help with other capital costs. And Lori is asking, sounds like you have an amazing team, which it really looks and sounds like that. Do you need more volunteers?
Yes, we always need more volunteers. We have an exceptional team here, from our staff through our volunteers and our donors. It's a real sort of family atmosphere. Everyone loves it. We work hard together. Volunteers are the backbone of getting the job done. There is an incredible amount of work that goes into making sure all that food that we get collected is available to people. So if you'd like to volunteer, you can just go to our website. There's a volunteer tab there. You fill out a brief application form, which is basically just looking for your contact information. And then you sign up for a volunteer orientation. Those are done by Zoom. And then once that's done, we get you plugged in. And you know, people can volunteer. Ideally, we hope people will volunteer once a week. It just allows us to schedule. We've got volunteers who volunteer more than that, and then we've got some who, you know, once every 2 weeks or once a month. But yeah, if you'd like to volunteer, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, wonderful. It's always a good feeling to participate in a community working towards a really good cause, which it sounds, I'm blown away about what you're doing. I think that's it, unless there's anyone else. Paul bid his adieu. He left another link for funding, to access some funding. So thank you again, Paul, for that. And any other questions? Any other comments? All right, looks like that's it. I do have this newsletter. It's the Loaves and Fishes newsletter. You can access it at that Google Doc link. And so if you want to see more about what they've been up to and some of the have a rundown of all those stats, an amazing number, like, wow, just still blown away about how the volume of food that goes through and that you handle. And as this was my first time moderating, I want to acknowledge that I forgot the land acknowledgement, and I want to do that now rather than just overlook it. So I wanted to just acknowledge that we have had the privilege to work and play and that the summit is now happening in Nanaimo, and we are situated on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, traditional territory of Snuneymuxw and Snuneymuxw First Nations, and we feel very blessed to do that, and are very, actually a big inspiration for putting on this summit is work that we have done with some of the First Nation people and bringing stewardship back to the land, taking care of the land, learning from Indigenous wisdom. And that's at the heart of our mission as Transition Nanaimo, led by Indigenous wisdom to do the work that we're doing to bring sustainability and lower our carbon footprint. There is one final question here. Will Peter share his presentation? There was amazing info there.
Sure. If people want to email me, I can send it. I don't, is there a Google Drive that you've got, JF, that can?
Yeah, so maybe we are going to be doing an email, or well, there will be resources posted on the website for each session. So maybe there we could post the link to the Google Drive slide presentation. We'll figure out a way. We're building this ship as we fly it, this plane as we fly it. So there's a will, there's a way. And yes, it was great information. We would like to make that available to people. And so we are concluding this session with Peter Sinclair, Loaves and Fishes. And again, I just want to just acknowledge you and all the volunteers, your staff, for all the incredible work that you're doing. It's way beyond that I ever imagined. I just thought you guys were getting some food out to people. Like, wow, I'm so blown away. I'm almost speechless.
Well, one thing I would extend to anyone, if you'd like to come have a tour of our facility, I mean, it's one thing to see some photos, and then when people come through, they're like, oh my gosh, like it's just, so reach out to us through our website. I'd be more than happy to book a time and give you a tour through the facility and see what we're doing.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to take you up on that. I'm excited for your new building and how that's going to be like next level. Yeah. So that concludes this session, and we'll be taking a lunch break now. But please do come back at 2 o'clock, where we'll be having our next session, session 3, which is The Power of Seaweed with Desiree Dupuis, VP Sales and Marketing of Cascadia Seaweed. So that should be quite fascinating.